This is a presentation on the coronavirus and unemployment and leave for employees. Today is March 31st, 2020, which is important because it's 24 hours before some major legislation, some major changes to employers comes into effect. My name is Chris Maxey, and I am the operations manager for Prefix Accounting. We're a bookkeeping and accounting firm that specializes in the hospitality and restaurant industry. We do bookkeeping, accounting, payroll, and point of sale implementations. Today we're going to be going over the CARES Act, as well as another piece of legislation, which is a widespread response to the COVID outbreak, and it has a ton of effects on individuals and businesses alike. Individuals are seeing direct payments in the form of tax credits, up to $1,200 per individual and more for people that are families or have children. There are large grants that are now available to businesses, as well as sizable loans for businesses to continue payroll and paying their expenses, as well as a series of tax incentives, and most importantly for employees, paid family and sick leave that goes into effect tomorrow. Just as a note, this is subject to change. This bill passed on Friday. We're still getting through all of the information and waiting on guidance from the IRS and Department of Labor. So this is not legal or tax advice. This is just our best interpretation of what we have read so far. With that being said, I wanted to introduce Gaye from Organization Gaye.
Hi, Chris. Thanks. My name is Gaye Weinberger. I'm the Director of HR Services at Organization Inc., and we specialize in supporting small businesses in a number of areas. Today, I want to talk to you about unemployment specifically, as well as some of the new paid sick and family leave policies. In terms of unemployment, anybody who's been permanently or temporarily laid off is eligible for unemployment. So even if you have just had a layoff pending notice that businesses can start reopening, you are still eligible for unemployment. In Massachusetts, your employer may also be partaking in the work-share program, and that's where they have reduced hours for key functions, and you may receive a mix of payment from your employer as well as unemployment. Your employer will be very specific with you if they do have a work-share program. One of the key things for everyone to know that as a result of COVID-19, most states, including New York and Massachusetts, have waived that 1-week waiting period for unemployment benefits. So you're eligible from the first day that you've not been able to report to work. Employers do have to pay you when they lay you off. They do have to pay you for all the hours that you've worked up to that point. And one of the things you should be aware of is right now, most unemployment agencies, and in Massachusetts particularly, are waiving the need to look for alternate work if you have a planned return date from work that's within the next 8 to 10 weeks. So if your employer has indicated to you that they intend to call people back in the April or May timeframe, be sure that you know what that date is. It's important to add that to your unemployment filing. Also, you know that you have sick time and paid time off that you may have earned and not used yet this year. You are able to take that prior to filing for unemployment. So you just need to let your employer know that you're going to take that time, and that will be deducted from your unemployment benefits.
Now, Gaye, as a question, if you have that sick time and paid time,
yes,
and then you get laid off, are you able to take that while also applying for unemployment?
You can, but it's still going to be reported as wages, and one of the questions that you'll be asked while you're filing for unemployment is if you're receiving any other payments from your employer, and you will need to report that. Also, as a note, that if any time during this period of time prior to your layoff, you had been out on workers' comp for a portion of that, there's going to be a question that asks you if you were receiving worker comp benefits as well. All of that goes into the calculation for unemployment.
Cool.
So one of the things you need to be aware of is that everybody's filing for unemployment at the moment. You've seen the numbers and you know lots of people are out of work at the moment. Lots of businesses have been deemed unessential and due to lack of traffic or simply because there's no orders coming in, they've not been able to keep their employees on payroll. So unemployment is really, really busy. There used to be an option for you to file over the phone if you don't have access to a computer. And unfortunately, they're not able to sustain that volume of calls right now. But if you can, even on your phone, go to the internet and go to mass.gov. There is a place to request a callback, and they will schedule a time to call you back and take your information over the phone. But filing online is your fastest way to do it. When you were laid off, you should have been provided a DUA pamphlet from your employer for the state of Massachusetts. An important piece of information on that pamphlet is your EAN number, your employer account number. You're going to need that when you file for unemployment. So if your employer has not provided that to you yet, definitely reach out to them and ask them for that number. And then there are lots of tutorials available to you from the state helping you walk through filing unemployment. They have a PowerPoint presentation that takes it screen by screen. There's also a how to file video, and we'll be sending these links out with this information.
Right. And if an employer is watching this, where do you find an EAN number?
That would be with your that would be with your unemployment filings. So if you don't have that available on one of the reports that you've gotten from the Department of Unemployment, then you need to reach out to your payroll company who's making your tax payments for you. They will absolutely have your EAN number.
So what I'm going to be injecting in here in these blue slides is questions that are frequently asked that over the last 72 hours. Either Gaye or myself have received this question a couple of times. So hopefully this will answer a lot of the burning questions that you have. So the first one would be, what if I don't want to come back from unemployment? What if my employer calls me back and I'm not really comfortable going back?
On a temporary layoff, one of the conditions is that you're available for work when you're requested to return to work. If you're not comfortable, most employers are being very lenient with that at the moment, and they're offering you your sick time or your paid time off as a way of extending your time out. But if you continue to refuse to return to work even after sanctions are lifted, you will be considered a voluntary resignation.
Okay, my next question is, can an employee on workers' comp leave file for unemployment or the new sick paid time?
No, workers' comp is actually making the payment to the employee at that point and providing their wages.
Okay. Can you receive Social Security and unemployment?
Yes, you can, actually. Social Security does allow people on Social Security to earn up to a certain amount, and if you've been relying on that income and it no longer is available to you, you can go in. Your Social Security will be taken to an account as income when they calculate your benefit, but you are eligible for for unemployment and Social Security at the same time.
Cool.
All right, so one of the big things that's been in the news a lot is this new paid time off. And as Chris mentioned earlier, it does go into effect tomorrow. It is not retroactive. So if you've lost time prior to the 1st, that time is out of your normal sick time. But the federal government has stepped in and made 2 new buckets of time available to employees. Unlike some other where the employer may have a lead time before you can use sick time, or the federal government where your paid family leave requires you to be employed for a year. This new time, you only have to have been working for that employer for 30 days. If you're a full-time employee, this is going to provide you 80 hours of paid sick time. And if you're a part-time employee, it's going to provide whatever your normal hours were. So if you were typically working 24 hours in a week, then it's going to be 24 hours for 2 weeks, so 48 hours total. And this sick time is available to you for a number of reasons. One of them is if you've been subject to a federal, state, or local quarantine related to COVID-19. Or you've been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine related to symptoms of COVID-19, or you're experiencing symptoms and you're seeking medical care and just have not been able to get into a doctor or a clinic yet. If you're a full-time employee or a part-time employee, it's 100% of your regular pay rate for that time. There are 2 additional reasons that you can be qualified for this time, and one is that you're caring for an individual that has any of those above reasons. So a member of your household is under quarantine, or they've been advised by a provider to self-quarantine, or they're experiencing symptoms, and you're their caregiver. For those situations, you're going to get 2/3 of your regular rate. So if your pay is if your pay is $12.75 an hour, for example, you would get 2/3 of the $12.75 times the number of hours you typically worked. So if that was 40-hour week, then it's 2/3 of $12.75 times 40. Or if you were working 24 hours a week, 2/3 of $12.75 times the 24. And that's particularly important for parents whose child care facilities or schools have been closed due to COVID-19. This leave does qualify for you. And yep. So for parents, really think about finding that notice that you had regarding a school closing or child care facility closing. One of the things that you do need to do is technically apply for this leave to your employer, and they're going to need something to substantiate the request. So your name, the start date, and the anticipated end date. If it is due to COVID-19 symptoms or care, the name of the medical provider who is recommending the quarantine. If it is a school, it can be a website notice, a newspaper article, anything that speaks to your school or child care facility being closed. And that 10 additional weeks is for that specific reason. Understanding that schools now have been ordered to be closed pretty much through the end of
Okay, so my question is the paid sick leave and expanded family and medical leave requirements retroactive? Meaning, can I use it for time that I've already spent at home?
Right. Unfortunately, you cannot. It is effective as of April 1st. That does not mean, however, that you can't start it now. So starting April 1st, if your child's already been out of school, you could start claiming benefits on April 1st going forward for those 2 weeks of paid sick time and then the 10 weeks of emergency family leave.
Cool. What is valid documentation for the new paid or paid sick or family leave?
Yeah, so I even actually have an update beyond what's on the screen. So in terms of school closings, anything can work: a website notice, an email, a newspaper posting, anything that talks about the fact that schools were closed. Obviously, if you've been given a copy of a government quarantine order or you've gotten any kind of written documentation from a healthcare provider, that absolutely is supporting documentation. However, some new guidance did just come out this morning. stating that because we don't want to overburden the healthcare providers at this point, that if you can at least provide the name of the medical provider and their contact information, we will always follow up on that documentation if they haven't given you anything in writing at this point. But just be sure that you have all that information when you talk to your HR person.
So you don't necessarily, as an employer, need to go out and verify that information. Right now, just providing the contact information is enough.
That is correct.
Okay. Can an employer require someone to seek medical assistance?
Yeah, and we do get this question because there are people like, I haven't been exposed, I'm not that sick. Yes, your employer can. If you're exhibiting any types of symptoms, your employer can request that you go home and not return until you're symptom-free and past any kind of contagious period. It's really important that they are acting in the behalf of all of their employees and ensuring the safety and health of everyone.
Can an employer require an employee to stay out of work once they are exposed to COVID, despite no recommended or required quarantine?
Yes, they can, because the fact that you have not yet been able to see a medical professional and maybe the public health hasn't reached out to you yet, even though you personally know that you were exposed. When you share that information with your employer, it is their requirement, again, to protect the health and safety of all their employees, to ask you to please go into self-quarantine during that time.
Okay. So this next section is geared towards employers and how to manage this new environment that we're in. Employees are more than welcome to continue on through this video. There is some content in there that might be relevant for you if, say, your employer is not ahead of the curve on this, to bring some ideas to the table.
So we really want to talk about how to stay engaged as both an employer and an employee during this time period. Whether you've been laid off or you've been fortunate enough to have a position where you could work remotely, it's really important that you maintain that relationship. As we well know, both federal and state governments are encouraging people where you can work from home to provide that ability. From an employer's perspective, when you're working with an employee, you want to make sure that that employee has adequate internet access in their home environment to be able to support whatever work you're asking them to do. You want to make sure that all hours are logged just as they would be if they were in the office. This is particularly important because it's sometimes hard for us to turn off when we're working remotely. We're not accustomed to sitting at our kitchen table and doing work, and sometimes it's like, oh, I want to just check this one more time tonight before I go to bed. We really want you to keep a routine and stay within those worked hours that you've been approved for, and log all those hours. It's also appropriate to make sure that you can create as much of a dedicated space as you can, and not everybody's home is going to have that ideal situation of a home office. In fact, few will, but you want to kind of carve off a little space where any work materials are yours and not being handled by other family members. You want to make sure as an employer that if they're going to be on conference calls or they're going to be talking to accounts while they're working from home, that that area is as noise-free as possible. If you are someone working from home, kind of introducing your situation, letting whoever you're speaking with know that you are working from home. You apologize if there are any noises, because at the end of the day, we can't stop our dog from barking. We can't stop our kids from talking. And just making sure they're aware of what those situations are. And again, I'm going to come back to that regular routine. If you have employees working from home, or even if you are an employee working from home, set up a schedule. Having a daily call or a video conference for the team. There are free tools out there. Zoom, one we're using right now to record this presentation. Google Hangouts, they don't cost anything if you already have a Google account. And set up regular times for check-ins, even if it's just an email check-in, to see what people are working on today, how far have they gotten, do they have any questions? And as you're working at home, I encourage you to keep up regular breaks. If you're used to taking lunch at a certain time, stop and take your lunch. Don't just sit there and work through the day. And there are chat tools that you can use. Again, Google Hangouts, Slack, there's lots of other options out there for staying in touch with your coworkers, even having those water cooler conversations.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, our team was really already pretty well set up for this distributed work environment, since we already had Zoom and Slack. But if we hadn't had that, it would be incredibly painful to try to get our work done. And as far as hours being logged, if you're currently using some sort of time card system right now, like physical time card system, this is the perfect time to switch to a digital or cloud-based time clock system, such as T-Sheets or Homebase or Deputy, which are geared towards having these distributed workforces and allow you to clock in and out from wherever you are.
Yeah, I'll throw another one out there for tracking time. My Hours is a really easy tool as well to set up and use. But it is important because we don't understand how much we take for granted seeing each other in the workplace and how isolating it can become, both for the employer who's like, oh, I wonder if they're really working, and the employee who's like, I wonder if anybody even knows that I'm doing stuff out here.
Right, exactly, for sure.
So just a couple of things I'm going to throw out there, both for employers and individuals. There are other things that are going on to try and strengthen the financial position and to provide some kind of relief for people. So one big one is, if you hadn't filed your taxes yet, the deadline for 2019 federal income tax filing has been moved out to July 15th. So you can breathe a little easier, you know, and take your time and get that done. I would encourage you to get it filed, because if you're filing for unemployment, they are going to be looking at income, as well as these federal relief checks that are being sent to taxpayers. This is coming directly from the federal government to you. It's $1,200 per individual if you're making less than $75,000, or a $2,400 check per couple if they are joint filers making less than $150,000. If you filed your 2019, they're going to be looking at your 2019 reported income. Otherwise, they're going to default to your 2018 filing.
And if I can just interject here,
yeah.
I did see an article today that issued guidance on what how that $1,200 changes.
Yeah.
For those making over $75,000. So apparently, for every $100 you make over $75, it reduces the amount you receive by $5.
Right. It's going to be a lot of math.
Yes. So basically, it declines from $75,000, and then it phases out completely if you make over $100,000.
Right, as an individual. Right.
Yes.
So be aware of that. If you have children under the age of 16 or younger, you are eligible for $500 per child. Unfortunately, if they're over the age of 16, that is not available to you. If your child is over the age of 16 and they have been filing on their own, they may very well get a check as well. So again, they're looking at tax filings. That's how they're identifying taxpayers. Whether you're filing taxes or are on Social Security, there's somewhere where a check has been being cut to you from the federal government is how they're identifying you.
Yeah.
If you are fortunate to have an IRA already set up, one of the things that they're doing right now is they're waiving that 10% early withdrawal penalty and allowing you to take up to $10,000 in distributions in the year 2020. It doesn't mean that you have to take $10,000 out right now. You might just take out whatever you think you need at the moment to help meet expenses, but you can maximize that up to $10,000 over the course of this year without paying that early withdrawal penalty.
You can do that multiple times as long as the aggregate is less than $10,000.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. And for those of us still paying student loans, they are waiving repayment of federal. Make sure I'm clear. that's federal student loans. So if you've taken student loans from other parties outside of the federal programs, you may need to contact those providers and see what they're doing. But the federal government, for federal student loans, they're waiving the payments for the next 6 months, and they're also waiving any accumulation of interest over that same period. So if you've got workers who've been laid off, and I will tell you, if you are one of the laid off employees, I would encourage you as well, stay in touch. I know a lot of the companies we're working with have built up either email distribution lists or phone trees or creating Facebook groups, but some way to connect with all of their employees. Remember, these are temporary layoffs. Employers want their workers back. You are a valuable resource to them, and they would welcome you back with open arms as soon as they can reopen for regular business. And I'm encouraging employers to set up routine timeframes for updating their employees about where they are in the layoff process, how things are looking. You know, every other week at minimum is a great way to reach out and let people know what's going on. We're also assisting, and again, we're going to provide some with today's presentation, but there are lots of resources that you could be sharing with your employees. There's a Oh, and I see a typo. I apologize. That should be 800-645-8333. That's Project Bread. It is a national food source hotline that can direct you to local resources if you are in need of food assistance. We're also providing a link that provides a list of Berkshire County food pantries and sources of meals. The city of Pittsfield has a resource guide, and when you open up this link, it's actually looks like an Excel workbook, and there are different tabs for different types of resources you might need. Berkshire Community Action Council, while the offices are closed, they are still taking phone calls. So we've provided the numbers there for both South County and North County, as well as their link, and they can help with things like fuel assistance, electric savings, emergency loans. There is a great effort within the local Berkshire County community to provide as many resources as possible to people being impacted by COVID.
And then some other resources that are available specifically to the hospitality industry is the James Beard Foundation has an evergreen page for COVID-19 and the resources that they are finding to be available to individuals that are in need. The James Beard Foundation itself is also putting together a grant program that allows employers to be able to take a $15,000 grant, no strings attached. The Welcome Conference is essentially the thought leadership of the hospitality industry. They're putting out a lot of content as well in terms of how to navigate this this crisis and how to change your business to suit what the current times are requiring. Finally, we have next we have the Independent Restaurant Coalition, which is a group of restaurants such as Danny Myers, Union Hospitality, and Tom Colicchio's Craft Group, and many, many others that have come together to build a lobbying effort for the restaurant industry. If you go to their website, you will be able to sign up for their newsletter, and they are trying to build a coalition of restaurants to be able to get better aid to the industry and the workers. And then finally, we have the Restaurant Workers Coalition, which is putting together and collecting funds for restaurant workers that have been laid off and providing financial assistance, aid, and resources to them so that they can provide for their families and themselves through this epidemic. We also have some other content that is coming down the pipe this week. Obviously, the CARES Act is a monstrous piece of legislation. So everybody is still getting through all of this, and we're trying to provide as many resources as we can in as fast a time frame as possible. We are trying to update our clients and anybody that is in the realm of needing help. And so these are the next things that we have coming down the pipe. We have content from Paul Glantz of Launch Consulting and Jacob Schroeder of Ascend Consulting that is on the tax incentives that are being put in place with the CARES Act. We have the EDIL programs, which are the SBA loans that are more flexible in certain circumstances than the payroll protection program that a lot of people are interested right now as employers. That payroll protection program, we've already done a breakdown of what that program looks like and what sort of shortfalls there are around it. You can find that at prefix.accountants/COVID, as well as our other resources. And then finally, we have a comparison of the programs. So right now, the thing that has got everybody's head spinning is what things do we take advantage of as business owners? And then what things do we not? And then what things can we put together and use together in tandem? So we have work share programs that have people going on unemployment. We have the payroll protection program. Can we use those in combination? The EDIL loans and grants. How do these things all work together, and what best suits our needs? And really, as we're looking through all this content, the question really is, it depends. And so you really need to take the time to go through all of the documentation as it's digested to make an educated decision. And we're hoping to have a matrix that makes that decision a little bit clearer for people. So I just wanted to take the time to thank Gaye for doing this presentation and helping employees and employers through this. I know that you have been responding to my emails from 7 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock at night as we're all trying to get through this. So I do appreciate, Gaye, everything that you're doing for our clients and for all the people that are really needing your help right now.
Well, and thanks, Chris, because we really appreciate the help that you've been giving us as well on navigating all of these financial programs that are becoming available, and they are often a little complex and sometimes exclusive, and it is quite the challenge you're taking on providing that comparison. And I think speaking for everyone at Organization Inc., we're here to help. So whether you're an employer or an employee and you're having challenges with unemployment or understanding the process, give us a call and we're happy to help you.
Cool. And what's the best way to reach out to you?
The best way is our main number, 413-528-7940. If we're not able to get to you right away, we do check voicemail constantly and are returning those calls. Or you can reach me at Gaye, G-A-Y-E, at organizationinc.com.
Cool. And if you have any questions about all of these programs, we'll also do the best we can to get in contact with and get back to you. But you can reach out to us at hello@prefix.accountants. We'll try to get back to you in 24 to 48 hours, but everybody has the same questions that you do right now, so we'll do the best that we can. I appreciate everybody taking time to watch this webinar, and also thank you again to Gaye for taking the time out of your busy day.